He, lina mai o ko pākahia pau e ku'ulahui Hawaii, a mena po'e pākahia pau ma luna o neia honua. O Anela keia bring you some MANAfest mana'o no keia po, mai ku'ukulaiwi o Kane'ohe, ma luna o ka mokupuni o Oahu, I ka pai moku o ke aupuni o Hawaii. Aloha and greetings to each and every one of you. My name is Anela Benson. I started a movement called the MANAfest Aloha movement back in 2017, essentially posting some inspirational mana'o or thoughts on social media to help to elevate the mana or the spiritual essence of our Honua, this earth, through the power of aloha. So it's been a minute or two. Actually, it's been a little bit over a year since I first started my YouTube channel, as well as posted my last video. Unfortunately, I went through so many, my wings are just flying all over the place. But I went through a lot of transitional changes last year in 2019. Not gonna lie, all of them were pretty fabulous. But it did take me away from being able to spread some of this manifesting mana'o with all of you. But if anything, of course, everything always happens for a reason, and it's always in divine timing. And so, of course, with all of the social storms that are transpiring on a global scale right now, I think now, if any time, is probably the most important time to spread some of this manifesting mana'o. So, mahalo for joining me. I'm currently doing the self-quarantine on Oahu. Flew back home, over a week ago. I'm almost done with my quarantine, but by the time you folks see this video, it'll be my birthday and I'll be liberated from this quarantine zoo. So thank you folks so much for joining me today. The main thing I wanted to address was, especially with the onset of COVID, I knew that the universe and Akua, all of the Akua or the guides, whichever God that you folks may resonate with, was definitely testing us as Kanaka or as humans. And the whole premise of this test was to see whether or not we had the capacity to elevate our vibrations back into one of peace through compassion and understanding, to see over all of the entities that divide us and resonate with the other human soul within us. Yeah, so aloha ke kahi ke kahi. Essentially, there are 7 different levels of impact that we have on our honua. So first, it starts with us as an individual, and it's the relationship that we have with us that's the most important, because the way that we converse with ourselves and the way that we relate to ourselves has an impact on how we relate to others on a one-to-one relationship, as well as our communities. So from us, it stems into our families, our friend circles, our community, our island, county, state, or other social divisions, as well as our government, our aupuni. And then it emanates out into the world. And so with that in mind, I know that this COVID test was really supposed to be one to see whether or not we have the capacity to elevate and lift each other up spiritually, and to really come together and establish that pilina, because we all have a common adversary, in this case, the form of a disease. And I kind of had a feeling that there were some things that would divide us, but I don't think any of us could have foreseen the ugly heads that have turned, especially in terms of bringing all of these suppressed heva or negative entities from not just the past few generations, but several millennia deep, in terms of bigotry and all of these other entities of division. So I just wanted to bring that one to the forefront. Honestly, key thing that we have to remember is that we play such a small or minuscule role in the bigger entity of life itself. You know, the universe itself is the greatest entity that we have. And then our Earth is one out of millions and billions of planets attached to certain stars. So on the scale of things, our existence here is very minuscule indeed. And if you think about the whole premise of our manifestation or our life here on earth, the whole premise is to enable our souls to grow. We were given these vessels or these human forms. Some may call them avatars, other people call them meat suits. So whatever you refer to it, it is what it is. But through these vessels, we were given these opportunities to experience life experiences that would help us to grow. Of course, growth cannot transpire in stagnation. So if we had an easy life, there would be minimal growth. And for some of you out there, I know that you folks are fellow light workers or healers or people who are helping to raise the vibration of our Honua, our earth. And you folks have definitely taken the harder path, because through all of the adverse conditions, that's where we have the accelerated versions of growth. I'm not gonna lie, I was privy to that as well. And so I know that the premise right now is for us to resonate with each other on a human level, to utilize the traumas that we may have experienced as children, or the traumas that we're still trying to heal from the generational heva, or all of the generational curses and negativity, or what other entities you may want to refer to them as, to use these as mechanisms of healing. Not only for ourselves, but for everyone involved. And so I just wanted to send some messages out of here. I know that we've had a lot of adversity that we've had to face as people, not only from a physical standpoint, but even more so from a racial standpoint. But I'm hoping that these experiences help us to look above and beyond these issues and realize that there's a greater entity that we're up against. This isn't just a physical war, it's a spiritual war. And it's a war that stems from within ourselves first. Unless we have the capacity to mihi or to rectify the things that are burning within us, there's no way that we could possibly heal each other and heal the world. And if you think about it, that's the thing that our world is begging of us right now. Not gonna lie, my heart goes out to the hundreds and thousands of people that were affected by COVID. And please, God rest their souls for those who have passed on. And please bring healing to their families for the ones that are still dealing with the ramifications of it, as well as all the medical personnel that have been dealing with this battle on the forefront. There's a much greater war that we are facing out there, and it starts with healing the generational heva. You know, personally speaking, I come from 10 different ethnic backgrounds, and it is a burden sometimes looking within, especially being of a mixed culture. You know, I'm half Hawaiian, but my great-grandfather is also from Arkansas. My last name is Benson, and I know that I come from a line of bigots, from Confederates, and I definitely can't resonate with them. I've always had the dreams or goals or aspirations of meeting up with my ancestors face to face one day. What would be a greater blessing than sitting in a room full of your kupuna, your ancestors, and having the opportunity to thank them for giving you life and bringing you here into this existence. But one thing that hurt so badly was coming to the realization that I wouldn't have that opportunity. Because if I were to sit amongst my own ancestors from that line, they would either try to maim me or lynch me or just kill me off altogether. And it's so painful and so hurtful, because I come from a beautiful genealogy of my Polynesian ancestors, you know, the greatest voyagers on the face of this earth, belonging to the greatest nation on the planet in terms of square surface area. Polynesians have occupied the largest mass or square area on the face of this planet. And when it all boils down to things, we all stem from Africa too. That's why this whole racial issue is beyond me. I can't even fathom where it even stems from. I know that from a spiritual standpoint, there are only two things that can exist: fear or love. Fear feeds your ego, but love feeds your soul. And so what we need to do as Kanaka, as people, is that we need to elevate ourselves and shed ourselves of our egos, humble ourselves, so that way we know our place. Because it's not just about the conflict that we have amongst each other as humans, it also regards the conflict that we have thinking that we're higher than any other being on this planet. Our life is no more significant than any animal or any plant form here. And yes, we do utilize them for sustenance. Okay? I know that there are many meat eaters out there who get sarcastic and they start hating on the vegetarians and the vegans for wanting to save animals, saying, oh, well, you're killing the plants too. I understand that. Every single entity has its own life essence, and it has its own spiritual essence too. So when you partake of those to sustain yourself, at least be grateful for the life that you have taken, the life that was sacrificed to enable you to live. These are the small entities that I'm talking about, and it all stems from within. If we can just look within ourselves and figure out all of these little entities that we can and should be grateful for, then we can start to heal some of those issues within ourselves. Then we can start looking at the relationships around us, looking at the pilina, or the relationship amongst our family members. And yes, sometimes there are some family secrets and some family pains that we need to deal with and overcome. But now more than ever is the time to heal them. Because as we strengthen our interpersonal relationships within our families, we can strengthen them within our friendships, which translates into strengthening our communities. And if there's anything to learn in this life, and Lord knows I've been guilty of it many a times, where I always thought that I had to shoulder all of these burdens on my own, the key message that I've learned is that we were not made to be in this existence alone. And that the most humbling experience that you could ever imagine is being able to let down your guard and ask for help when you need it. And there are many out there that I know that have been suffering with depression, that have challenged their mindset to even think that they're not even worthy of living anymore. I know I've been down that path a few times myself. But the greatest lesson that I've learned from that is that the universe and Akua will always give you one of two things. They will either give you blessings or lessons. And oftentimes, those lessons are blessings in disguise themselves. And so for all of you dealing with depression out there, especially you highly functioning ones, where nobody could even tell that something is wrong with you, please, I send all of you my aloha, and I hope that you folks feel it. Because I've been in those dark and lonely places myself, and I would never wish it upon my worst enemies. And just know that there are brighter days ahead. As soon as you can grasp the lesson that this thing is trying to teach you, whether or not you experienced rape, whether or not somebody significant to you had been murdered in your family, if somebody had stolen from you, if somebody stole your soul and your dignity and your pride from you, please think of the lesson behind it. And I know it sounds cliche to think that the actions that somebody does against you is a reflection more of themselves than it is on you, but it's true. And a whole part of this spiritual lesson that we're supposed to be learning on this spiritual path or quest is that all of these people were brought into our lives for reasons, to either be the blessing or to be the lesson. And we have to thank them for these lessons, because that's the only way we can grow. And I know it's been hard. The hardest part is having to forgive somebody who's not even sorry, and having to learn to move on in their absence. There are people that we cling to, people that we think that we couldn't live without for the rest of our lives. And lo and behold, they just drop out of our lives like flies, and we're left to pick up the pieces. So my message to you folks is there's life beyond them. The hardest lesson that I had to learn in this lifetime was the law of detachment. My loyalties run deep to the point where it becomes loyalty to a fault, where you put everybody else's needs in front of you, and no matter how many times they hurt you or stab you in the back, you're probably the first one to run back to them to help them, aren't you? Because that's just in your nature. And people will use you, and people will abuse you. They'll take advantage of you. And none of them will probably express gratitude either. And it's okay, because the lesson wasn't for them, it was for you. So I hope that you folks have taken this opportunity, especially with COVID, to go within. Be thankful for the quarantine. It gives us some time to pause our lives. Lord knows I was a workaholic all of my 20s. And what snapped me out of that cycle was I had to take a month off from work and from all of my commitments. I was working 18 to 20-hour days, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I did that for a couple of years. I was burning myself out ragged. And I know that many of you can resonate with that same scenario. And why? Because it was based out of fear. I know I was afraid to deal with the inner demons that were lying within, some of my childhood traumas. And I know that you folks are dealing with some as well. And so what I'm asking you folks to do is to take this time, appreciate this time. Don't be a COVID idiot and go socialize with all the other idiots out there who are trying to get each other sick. That doesn't do anything productive for us. Take this time to go within. Have these necessary conversations with yourself. And more importantly, start learning the concept of self-love. I'm turning 38 this year. In fact, when you see this video, I will be 38. And it's taken me, at least 35, 36 years to even realize the concept of self-love even existed, even though I heard it many a times. And to those of you light workers and spiritual workers out there, I know it's been frustrating as hell holding space for the other ones who are still sleeping. I've been on this spiritual huaka'i journey now for 17 years. And not gonna lie, I still falter back into my human or ego side every once in a while. We're not perfect, nor could we be made perfect, but at least we can take our experiences to help to elevate others. And yeah, it's been frustrating, especially the past couple of weeks, looking at how much ignorance and hatred is out there in this world. And realizing you're preaching to a deaf choir. Deaf and blind and mute. Well, not necessarily mute, because they keep spewing out all of these absurdities, talking about hatred and why should I care. And sometimes you just want to take them and go throw them out into the sea of truth and let them swim back to shore until they realize what the truths are in front of them. And still yet, they would rather drown than pay attention to what's around them. And it's okay. That's their lesson, not ours. So I just want to commend all of you folks for holding space and continuing to hold space, especially for the ones that are too po'opakiki or stubborn to wake up yet to the realities of what's happening around us. And I want to remind everybody to please resonate in love. Going back to fear and love, those are probably the two most influential entities in the universe. Fear will manifest itself as greed. Why? Because you're afraid that there wouldn't be enough for you. So you want to covet as much as possible because you're afraid of running out of things. But at the end of the day, None of that materialistic BS means a damn thing. There are 3 things that I am grateful for every morning when I wake up. First and foremost, I am grateful to the akua, to the gods, to our aumakua, our ancestral guardians, and to our kupuna, my ancestors, for bringing me into fruition. That is always first and foremost. Second of all, I always thank akua for all of the blessings that he has given me throughout my lifetime. Because as many hardships that I have experienced in this lifetime, I've also experienced a wealth of blessings, even in their tiniest forms. And in my humble opinion, it's those tiny blessings that have meant the most to me. And last but not least, I always thank him for all of the lessons. No matter how trying those tribulations were at times, those were my saving graces too. So even though there were moments where I felt like dying, those were the ones that made me stronger. To the point where I'm okay with people coming in and out of my life. They were there for that time and that reason. So thank them for the lesson and move on to the next. Because I'm on the mindset of trying to grow. Because I know that as I start to elevate and grow on this path, then I start to help the collective be able to polomua or to press forth on their journey of self-growth. And so for all of you joining me today, I just wanted to thank you folks for taking the time out to spend some time with me, to be mindful of our thoughts. And when you go out and interact with others, I want you to think of 3 things. 1, how does my actions impact others? 2, how does it affect my spiritual growth? And 3, what can I do to contribute to the overall growth of our earth so that our future generations don't have to deal with the same tribulations that we've been dealing with on a daily basis? With that mindset in mind, please manifest Pono. Pono is righteousness. The backside of my shirt says, life's more ono when you live Pono. And so I implore all of you folks to please join me on this bandwagon of manifesting aloha into our earth. Please start with yourself. Not just learn about self-love, but practice it daily. Whether or not it's your self-talk, or if it's the way you treat yourself, even just spending time alone. Nobody realizes the power of solitude and solace. It is such a strong entity because it enables us to look within, to see the things that need to be healed, and it gives us time to address them. And especially to all you mothers out there, or to any single parents, you folks are the most selfless entities out there, as well as to all the teachers out there. Whether or not you're teaching in an actual institution, or if you're a community leader that helps to elevate our youth and our parents by providing them with ike to help them grow, please remember to take time for yourselves. Because you can't keep giving to everyone else without replenishing your own wells. These are some of the life lessons that I've been learning on this journey. With that being said, ahui hoia o ko pakahia pau. Until we meet again, aloha.